Hi, I'm Carlton from the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Today I want to talk a little bit about safety, and not so much about specifics of safety, but more about broad concepts. My dad and I were having a conversation on the phone the other night, talking about using a chainsaw, actually. And I learned how to use a chainsaw from my father. I watched him cut many a tree. I helped him cut and haul and split firewood and all that kind of stuff. And the number one thing he always taught me about that was safety first. And I have to say, that saved my life many times over the years. And I've been thinking about making this video for a couple of days since we spoke about that. I came in here last night and just wasn't feeling quite inspired about it. Well, today I had some excellent inspiration. So I guess I should just say he was commenting about how he liked when he watched me. I was helping him do firewood the other day, and he was watching me use the chainsaw, and he liked how methodical and procedural I was about it. And so when I use a chainsaw, if I'm using a chainsaw, the only time that I ever have that break off is when I'm making a cut. When I'm done making a cut, unless I'm going right to another cut, that brake goes back on. So that way if I'm stepping, moving around, shifting a log, there's no chance of that chain spinning and cutting me. I keep my chainsaw chains really sharp. I have a chainsaw sharpener right here. I guess you can kind of see part of that. And I keep my chains super sharp. I cut my chisels real deep, so I have real big chips coming off, and I can rip through logs with that chainsaw and be super efficient. But when you cut through a 10-inch oak log in, say, 5 seconds with a chainsaw, and you realize that oak log is double the size of my thigh, I'm not a real big guy, you realize that chainsaw could go through your leg in a second maybe at full throttle. So you could take your own leg off that fast. You have to realize how dangerous those tools are, and you have to be very aware of that and very careful. Anyway, my point is, I have everything I do that I work with on the farm that is dangerous, and even stuff that I don't consider to be dangerous. I develop a procedure and a method for doing things so that I don't get injured, so that even if I'm completely not paying attention, the procedure prevents me from getting injured. And so I want to relate a story about tonight, what happened to me. I was cutting down 4 different cherry trees all in the same area, and there were different trees leaning in different directions around each other. And so whenever I cut a tree, I go right up to the base of the tree, I look right up the tree, I look what direction it's leaning, I look at what heavy branches are hanging off of it, and I try to estimate where that tree would fall if it were just cut straight clean at the bottom. And then I try to base all my hinging and all the logistics of dropping that tree safely on that information that I've gathered. So tonight I had a complex puzzle. It's on a side slope right where the ram line comes down to the level zone. It's a very steep slope coming down the hill. There are lots of trees leaning all different directions. The way things were cut in there, the sunlight comes in there at a strange angle, and so there's many different growth directions of trees, and so there were lots of different angles. And so I went through and I figured out which tree to drop first and second and third and fourth. And I went through, I dropped the first tree, it dropped right where I wanted it to, I hinged it, dropped it, no problem. Dropped the second tree, hinge, drop, no problem, exactly where I expected it to go. The third tree and fourth tree were 2 that were leaning kind of like this with each other, and they both appeared to be leaning down the hill. I looked up both of those trees, they both looked like they were going to go where I thought they were going to go. I developed a plan to drop them. I cut the first tree so it would fall down, and then I could cut the other tree and not have the hazard of one tree leaning on another while I'm trying to cut. I cut the first tree and it didn't fall. It hung up in a tree branch way up high, probably 35-40 feet off the ground. I said, okay, I knew where it was leaning. I knew where I was cutting was safe, so I backed out and I cut the second tree, hoping that that tree would grab it and pull it down. Oh, no such luck tonight. No such luck at all. But it's okay, because I figured I could pull on the bottom of the first tree with the tractor and get it to skid out and drop. And where I estimated it to fall would be basically right down the slope. And so I went and got the tractor and brought it up, set it up, got ready to hook up with the chain. I went and re-examined the spot, because I always like to do that right before I hook up. To pull down a tree that's standing or something like that. That's a very dangerous situation to be in. It's very easy to mistake those physics and think that you're going to pull the bottom of the tree out and it'll fall the direction you want. And sometimes you put tension on it and there's enough pressure on the tree and the stump to hold the bottom of the tree, and you end up pulling the tree toward yourself. So you have to be really careful of that. Well, that was exactly the situation I found myself in tonight. I went to look at it. There was a nice opening where I wanted to drop the trees, but it was a spot where I was going to be right underneath the trees with the tractor trying to pull them down. So I re-examined the situation and I opted to move uphill to a much tougher spot to get into with the tractor and a much tougher spot to set up. But where it was A, uphill, B, way out of way of those trees falling, so that even if they mistakenly fell in a different direction than I was expecting, they wouldn't land on top of me. And C, I had a huge cedar tree between me and those trees, so I had some type of protection, so even if they came at me, the cedar tree would help buffer some of that blow. Well, sure enough, I hooked the tractor up, I put the chain on and gave it a little yank. I got it off the first tree that I had cut off of its stump. It fell and dropped and started to fall, and where do you think it went? Right exactly where I would have been. That tree that hit the ground right where I would have been was about that big around at the top, and at the base it was a good 14 or 16 inches. That tree would have killed me instantaneously. And so I was very grateful that I had taken the time to plan and think about that. So my overall concept of this video here is, when you do anything that might be dangerous, or even something you think might not be dangerous, try to think about all the logistics and physics involved, and try to develop a really sound plan that leaves nothing to chance that you don't have to leave to chance. And if you find that there's something that you end up having to leave to chance, maybe it's better not to do it, and to either hire someone in who can do it safely, or wait until you can figure out a way to do it safely. Like I said, this tree tonight would have absolutely killed me, no question about it. It would have landed right where I was sitting on the tractor. And so fortunately I went uphill and pulled from uphill, and it fell right where I would have been. And I'm very grateful to be alive and healthy, and all my limbs and digits in one piece. So anyway, broad overview. Always develop basically an engineering plan on how to be safe on what you're doing. Whether you're on the farm or anywhere else, especially if you're doing dangerous work, really think about what you're doing. It's well worth taking the time not to end up losing a leg, a limb, an arm, being injured for the rest of your life, or worse yet, losing your life. I hope this helps someone. I hope you'll stop and think, and that you'll heed my words about this. Stop and think before you go to cut something, before you go to move something with a heavy machine. Just stop and think about it. A little bit of extra time may save your life. I hope this message reaches you well. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like and want to subscribe. And please check us out on Patreon. We could use your help. We want to develop bigger farming systems and help you better understand how to set up good homesteads, good systems, good water supplies, heating, cooling, Raspberry Pis, computer controls, remote monitors, ram pumps, you name it all. Love it. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network.
The Pharmacy Seeds Network YouTube channel is here to provide educational materials related to farming and gardening. Our primary focus is to educate farmers, gardeners, homesteaders, preppers, and other self-reliant people to grow better food through organic methods, but at a higher standard. Our focus is on high-brix farming, using combinations of trace minerals, rock dusts, foliar feeds, essential oils, balanced soils, and appropriate biology to facilitate truly healthy plants that are both pest and disease resistant, as well as far more productive. In amongst this main goal, we intend to include many technical details for layout, heating, cooling, water pumping, and too many other farm-related operations to list. Through education, we can make our farmers and gardeners more self-reliant, close fertility loops, reduce pesticide usage, increase productivity, and preserve ecology for future generations, which fortifies our food system as well as our sovereignty. Ultimately, all this comes back together to make healthier, happier people, with the same effect echoing down through communities and ultimately around the planet. To that end, if you believe in our cause and wish to support us, it is greatly appreciated. Any amount you give helps.
Hi, I'm Carlton from the Pharmacy Seeds Network.
So now that you know what the channel is about, let me tell you a little bit about Patreon. Patreon is an easy way for you to support my channel and the projects that I'm working on. a lot of these projects, people give me most of the pieces parts, and I scrounge pieces parts in the woods, and I cut my own trees and lumber and timber. But sometimes I can't source those parts. Sometimes I have to pay out of pocket for those parts, and I don't always have the money to do that. So your Patreon help can help with that and other projects. As a Patreon subscriber, as time goes on, I will start releasing videos on Patreon first, and then eventually onto YouTube. So you'll get to be part of the first release of videos. And when we reach 200 patrons, we're going to put a website up, and we'll put all sorts of extra videos, documentation, and all sorts of other information. We'll make that available to our Patreon supporters. And if you wanted to become a first tier provider, you could get your name in the credits on the YouTube videos if you're interested in that. I hope you find our channel interesting and intriguing. I hope you'll support us on Patreon if you can. If you can't, I hope you'll just enjoy the channel and spread it and share it with others, and spread and share that knowledge and information. That's really the goal. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll support the Pharmacy Seeds Network on Patreon.